Welcome to Fourth Place, your place to learn about U.S. geography, urbanism, transportation, and city planning. If California were a country, it would rank, in terms of nominal GDP, as the world's fourth largest economy, behind Germany and ahead of Japan with over $4 trillion. California is home to some of the most innovative people and companies in the world, with, for example, Apple, Google, Qualcomm, and Cisco, and their talent, all calling California home. California was founded on its richness of natural resources, is the largest exporter of produce in the country, and its cities are often at the forefront of progressive politics and public transportation accessibility. San Diego is home to the nation's busiest light rail system, Los Angeles is home to the nation's largest light rail system, and San Francisco is home to the nation's most iconic light rail system. And so one would assume that California would be the natural place to host America's first high-speed rail system, and it was very much supposed to be. In 1996, then-Governor Pete Wilson established the California High-Speed Rail Authority with the aim of developing a proposal to present to both him and state legislatures before giving Californians a public vote on the matter. Between 1996 and 2006, a detailed study found that high-speed rail lines would be economically, environmentally, and socially profitable, and as such, work got underway to develop a strategic plan and project proposal. After the completion of a business plan, the California High-Speed Rail Authority sought input from international counterparts, hiring consultancies on high-speed rail projects to peer review their proposal, including SNCF from France, DE Consultant from Germany, and JARTS from Japan. Finally, in August of 2005, an implementation plan, which estimated the project would take between 8 to 11 years to complete, was approved. But it wouldn't be for another 3 years before the elements of the proposal were put to voters. Eventually, in the 2008 election, California's Proposition 1A was approved by voters, which allowed the sale of almost $10 billion worth of bonds to fund the project. At the time, the network was penned to be completed by 2020, connecting Los Angeles and San Francisco through a series of high-speed segments that would see trains travel at around 215 miles per hour. It would run through Southern California, Sacramento, the San Joaquin Valley, and the San Francisco Bay Area. Fast forward to today, 28 years after the California High-Speed Rail Authority was formed, 19 years after the implementation plan was approved, 16 years after voters approved $10 billion to fund the first third of the project, and 4 years after it was supposed to be completed, here's what the state has to show for it. You see, you're looking at a blank screen right now because the state has, in fact, pretty much nothing to show for all of this time and money. And I wonder, did those Japanese consultants that the California High-Speed Rail Authority hired in 2000 ever tell them that Japan's first high-speed rail line was completed in just 5 years' time, also for $10 billion, in the 1960s? I, for one, hope they did tell them that, just for the sake of hitting their fragile egos. I don't mean to be harsh when I say this. Well, actually, yeah, I kinda do. The California High-Speed Rail Authority is, and has always been, horribly run. This is a government organization that has failed damning audit after damning audit, and has overseen a project that has had its estimated costs balloon up to unspeakable figures, from an original estimate of around $33 billion to $88 billion, and now to $128 billion. And yet, after everything, to this day, they have spent $11 billion and built 33 miles of rail. That's 33 miles out of approximately 800 miles once both phases of the project are complete. This is devastating. It's devastating to urbanists and transportation enthusiasts. It's devastating to the potential businesses and economies that would have seen so much growth if the project was completed on time in 2020. It's devastating to the California taxpayer. It's devastating for Gavin Newsom and the California High-Speed Rail Authority, and honestly, all the governors since 1996. But mostly, it's devastating for America broadly. Yet another facet of America's superiority complex that, at this point, solely pretty much hinges on the military-industrial complex. We are a nation failing and falling behind other Western civilizations rapidly. How can America continue to think it has industrialized superiority to China, the EU, Japan, and others when all of the above each have thousands of miles of high-speed rail lines? Hell, even Uzbekistan has hundreds more miles of high-speed rail than the US, and I don't even know where that is. Like and subscribe to send me to Uzbekistan so I can document their high-speed rail system, because honestly, I'd love nothing more. The point is, America is falling behind. While other countries are flaunting their free healthcare and high-speed rail, we're stuck driving from place to place, risking our lives and livelihoods, one hospital bill away from bankruptcy. So who's to blame for California's epic high-speed rail failures? Well, those figures, NIMBYs, donors, and special interest groups span a broad political spectrum, each wielding their respective powers for the sake of their own benefit. The project has been stifled in a number of ways. Notably, acquiring the land to be used for the high-speed rail has been a big challenge, with lawsuits coming in seemingly one after the next from landowners and NIMBYs. Interestingly enough, land acquisition was the least of Japan's problems when they built their high-speed rail network, mostly due to their strong eminent domain laws. In Japan, the government can and will use the land your property lies on to build rail, whether you like it or not. Of course, they'll pay you for it, but they don't mess around. Funny thing is, eminent domain is also in the US Constitution, and if California used it like the Japanese did with such veracity in the 1960s, it likely would have had a much cheaper and easier go at its high-speed rail project. Taxpayer groups and lobbying from the aviation companies continues to be a thorn in the side of high-speed rail projects. On the one hand, though, taxpayer groups, and Republicans mostly, claim that the project has been a huge waste of taxpayer dollars, given the amount of money sunk into the project, coupled with its current status. In my point of view, it all comes from poor leadership. Poor leadership that stems from the California High-Speed Rail Authority's Real Estate CEO Board of Directors. You know, for a board full of veteran CEOs, COOs, and project managers, these Sacramento mines sure know how to waste away money like they're playing a bad game of Monopoly. Instead of foreseeing the challenges that come with building high-speed rail, they've made the citizens of California empty promise after empty promise, which has lit a flame of frustration for the project in the public eye. Honestly, the whole board needs a retooling, worse than the New Orleans Pelicans, in my opinion. But everyone knows that when you're in a situation where you're awful at your government job in California, you couldn't have any more job security. Even the LA Times once ripped into the managerial decisions coming out of the California High-Speed Rail Authority, notably when they changed the bidding rules for selecting a builder for the train's first phase in the Central Valley, a shift that subsequently made it possible for a consortium led by Sylmar-based Tuda Perini to be ranked as the top candidate despite receiving the lowest technical rating. That was back in 2012, and well, for once, the Times were right. For their part, NIMBYs all across California have voiced their usual concerns about property values and the environment, as if building more highways and flying more planes is the more sustainable solution. The loudest among them are in their own bubble zip codes like Palo Alto, fighting tooth and nail against something so clearly beneficial, even President Trump praised them. No, seriously, don't let anybody tell you that Trump isn't in favor of the idea of high-speed rail in the US. He just said back in August, when talking about Japan's Shinkansens, remarking that they, quote, go unbelievably fast, unbelievably comfortable, with no problems, and we don't have anything like that in this country. Not even close. And it doesn't make sense that we don't. Doesn't make sense. That's coming from Trump, not me. Believe it or not, this is actually a bipartisan issue that everyone can get behind. Speaking of bipartisanship, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room, or better yet, the donkey that was Joe Biden's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, better known as the Infrastructure Bill. This bill has been often used as a defense for many on the left when rather independently minded urbanists suggest that both Republicans and Democrats are at fault for America's high-speed rail lag. They may point to this chart and say, hey, look how much we got for passenger rail, $36 billion. Wow. $1 billion for highway removal and reconnecting communities? Wow. Wait, what's that? $300 billion federal dollars throughout the administration for roads, highways, and bridges? Oh. Huh. Right. But hey guys, it's okay. This bill was bipartisan, so at least we can blame both parties equally for their incompetence on this one. You win again, corporate lobbyists. And this kind of federal political virtue signaling surely trickles down to the state level here in California. While California's high-speed rail project has stumbled, the state has quietly continued to expand its highway system. This sort of thing contradicts the very premise of the high-speed rail project, which was meant to reduce the state's dependency on car travel and alleviate traffic congestion. Instead of transitioning towards a future based on sustainable, high-capacity rail, the state continues to invest heavily in automobile infrastructure, further entrenching the very problem high-speed rail was designed to solve. California and America's utter failure to properly invest in nationwide high-speed rail is a sad reality at this point. If you're part of Gen Z like me, or even a millennial, you probably won't get to experience any sort of high-speed rail infrastructure the likes of China, Japan, or Uzbekistan has in your lifetime, and that's a real black pill. Realistically, California might have their first two phases complete sometime in the 2040s or 2050s, but with really no other high-speed rail project with construction underway in the US, dreams of American high-speed rail interconnectivity are chipped away from transit enthusiasts with every passing year. We can only watch as our Congress sends $200 billion to Ukraine, $20 billion to Israel, and billions more to other countries and funds overseas. We must watch the clown show that is the federal, and in my case, the state government, that fundamentally lack any backbone and are bought out by corporate lobbyists. Corporate lobbyists whose sole goal is to spend as much money as possible to stifle projects like this. California, and America more broadly, has been given enough time to figure this thing out. But as long as the bureaucratic committees, NIMBYs, and lobbyists are allowed to control what happens in this country, we will never be on the pace that the rest of the West is. And that fact likely won't change regardless of who's in the White House. And with the way things have been going, even if the federal government flooded the California high-speed rail project with cash, do you really think it would speed up the process, given the people put in place of its oversight and the record they have so far? Absolutely not. But maybe there's hope. Maybe one day we'll have a Congress, left and right, full of people who aren't interested in being corporate shills, but are virtuous of the duties of their elected office. A bipartisan leadership that cares about connecting our cities, neighborhoods, and districts instead of funding projects that lead to further division, or should I say, subdivision. Stalling on American high-speed rail is not okay. America's car-centric infrastructure must be nerfed. While the current outlook of America's high-speed rail future is concerning, we should hold out hope that as the younger generations come into power, our voices will become louder, and they really will start to make a change. But in the meantime, our only option is to just sit back and watch and hope that something like the California high-speed rail project is complete within our lifetimes. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. It would really help this channel grow and make our voices heard. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next week from 4th Place.